Chicago, Chicago, I'll show you around.
When you speak of Chicago, the corner was our magic, our music, our politics. Fires raised as tribal dances and war cries broke out on different corners. Power to the people.
Maybe we could start again.
Greetings, friends, family, and passersby. We're back with the Chicago Sunnyside podcast, but today we're not in Chicago. I'm one of your hosts, once again, Kasabez Maakmaah.
And I'm Nehez Meniooh. It's been a while. I've been traveling since we got started on this Sunnyside train, but I'm back. Kasabez came to me here in Bobo-Dioulasso, Burkina Faso.
Where both of us currently have residence, although we're back and forth, so we'll be seeing you back again in Chicago soon.
Yes. I'll actually be on my way there in a few days, but we wanted to make sure to start our episodes from the motherland, from the heart of culture, human culture, from the source of human, what would you say? Civilization, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, we're both here to deepen our cultural roots, and right now we are in the Chicago Sunnyside Studios, Africa, or should we say what? Bobo-Dioulasso?
We shouldn't say Africa. We should maybe say Sia.
Sia.
Many people don't realize that most of the localities we have around the world, they have their original names, and then they have names that were imposed upon them by those in power. And Africa is one of those names. Africa is really a name that's, when you check the history, it's derogatory. So sometimes you won't really hear us refer to it that often as Africa, maybe just, so that the common viewer can relate. And the same goes for the city of Bobo-Dioulasso. Bobo-Dioulasso was a name imposed upon it, but the original name was Sia.
Yes, and probably we should explain that Bobo-Dioulasso, aka Sia, is one of the major cities in the country of Burkina Faso in West Africa. If you haven't heard of it, look it up, and you'll see we have a very rich history here that we are happy to receive.
And in the same line, some of our older viewers may have heard of the country of Upper Volta, but in 1980s, the name was changed from Upper Volta after the people led a revolution and took their country back, and then named it according to their own languages. Burkina Faso meaning the land of upright people. So that's where we're broadcasting from you today. This is a special episode that we have today because it's starting the series that we'll be bringing to you in this year of 423 in the Kemetic calendar, representing the 25-year anniversary of Kebtah's mission in the West. And today's episode will be our first of a series, and since it's our first, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to start at the beginning of Kebtah's identity as an organization. And that identity really started here in the country of Burkina Faso, where we sit in now. So we're excited to bring you this episode and give you a little peek into what led to the profound mission of Kebtah, or the Earth Center, that today we have access to in Chicago.
Yes, Brother Nehez was fortunate enough to catch up with one of the I don't know what you would call it, founding members or original members of that organization here in Burkina Faso. And we have a great interview lined up to show to you. But before that, we're going to get into a couple of, brief topics. So what do you think about the Israel-Palestine situation?
The Israel-Palestine situation, I mean, anytime you see such a severe situation of loss of life, loss of human life, as a human being, you can't help but to, you have to think of it one way. It's sad, it's disheartening, it's a terrible situation. If you imagine the families there that are losing their loved ones, the children that are losing their parents, the parents that are losing their children, it's terrible. But it's a piece of our human history or human happenings that really goes back a long ways. And what I notice now, as usual, is that the media, the common perspective on it, really, polarizes, but it also doesn't take into account that a large part of the history that led into that, a large number of the sequences that led up to that event, and that makes it easier to polarize, because if you don't look at, well, this person smacked this person first, then you will say this person for smacking them back is so terrible. So, and then we just run in circles, because then our memory allows us to forget what has happened, and then the other one who's now trying to retaliate doesn't have any reason to, or isn't justified, and then we demonize them, and then there's another retaliation to go back on them, and we just continue to lose life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation that has a very, very long history, and you don't really get to hear about the history. Some people like to just pick bits and pieces of what they want to talk about that is whatever they want to use to support their argument, and then the other side that you can look at, they pretty much ignore, they refuse to address, which is pretty much what we see going on all the time with the political situation. You have this polarization, and one side is always kind of capitalizing on differences, between different perspectives to push an agenda.
Yes. But what's even more problematic in this situation is that even when we want to look at the history, we only look at the history of the religious ideologies that are involved. And the history never goes beyond those religious ideologies. Because now the situation in Israel, Palestine, is one of religious ideological fight. And then it's so easy to polarize people according to that, because it's like, which religion do you stand for?
Right.
And then maybe there will be some people that are a little more enlightened, that are a little more focused on, well, I just want to be a good person no matter my religion, and then they will look at, well, who's more justified and who's more right. But if you don't consider what the history in that place was before those religions took over the minds of those people, and then pitted them against each other, and took land away from one and then took land away from the other, then that will be, then you're not really getting a good perspective on the situation.
Mm-hmm. And even now, aside from the religious aspect, you have a very politicized aspect as well, where the country of Israel is being used by, United States and other Western nations to push its agendas in the Middle East. And, I think a lot of people now are seeing the realities of that situation, where there's a lot of kind of distrust on the side of, why America always is supporting Israel, why every time there's a situation with Israel, the president always has to come out and say, hey, we need to get behind Israel. And this is the first time I've even seen, like, the president and the, major politicians kind of take a step back from that and say, at least pay some lip service to the other side, even if obviously their actions are still like totally behind Israel. Yes. They're at least paying lip service. And did you see President Biden said, "Oh, we're having a new anti-Islamophobia campaign"?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I saw it, but we also have to take into consideration that President Biden, when he looks ahead in what's important to him, he's coming up on another
election season,
and he knows that he's against perhaps Trump, and so those that he can depend on for the vote are going to be those that are in Islam, that Trump has already alienated long time ago. Mm-hmm. So he better double back and at least pay some lip service to try to gather those people, because with his vice president, he knows he might have the black vote, at least some of it, because Trump targets them as well. He might have, the Islamic vote, so he can't go too far. But what you're saying is true. It's become so political, but it's hard to differentiate religion and politics. And then we have to wonder why Israel, this, father of one of the modern religions, seems to be so politically powerful. If there's, a difference between religion and power. Religion and politics.
Yeah, I mean, it is, I tried recently, with all the stuff with Kanye and stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeezy.
I tried to...
Shout out to Yeezy. Shout out to Yeezy.
Let's shout out to
one of Chicago's finest that really tries hard to speak his truth, regardless of the repercussions. You have to shout out that guy.
Yeah, you gotta appreciate someone like that. I mean, I don't know him personally, but I think the stances that he takes and his willingness to take unpopular stances is something to respect, regardless of if you agree with them or not. But in any case, after that, I heard some Jewish people talking about, well, you don't understand like how Jewish people are kind of like feel like they're such a small group of people, and it's just so easy for them to be targeted. And considering what's happened in the past, and then also there was other stuff going on with the Anti-Defamation League coming out that they're kind of like trying to take Twitter sponsorship away. Or not sponsorship, but like advertisers kind of pressure big companies into not advertising on Twitter and things of that nature. So Elon Musk has a lawsuit against them too. So it's just interesting, to have that kind of I don't know, is that what you call the Napoleon complex or what, where you feel like you're so small that you got to act bigger than you are, and then by try to act too big, it's almost like you make people hate you even worse, when hatred is what you're kind of scared of. It's an interesting kind of...
Well, yeah, we can call it a Napoleon complex, but, I don't want to trivialize or make smaller the big issue that's there, because we find ourselves as humanity in this situation, the loss of life, the polarization, again and again, because of the issue of human ambition. And human ambition, where you find it, tends to lead to that kind of aggressiveness, that kind of, I can't be cut out of what should be mine or what I think is mine. And you see that portion of the globe has been the site of that fight, where you can't cut me out from what's mine. You can't cut me out from what's mine. And I have a right to, power. And when we really start to talk about that and the origins of it, and even what led to these religions being so big in the world, that really opens up the perspective on this situation. This is a big situation because it's been going on for a long time.
A couple thousand years, maybe.
Yeah, even before Israel was created, it was still happening. The fight there between those that associate themselves with what's now called Christianity or Judaism, and those who associate themselves with Islam and the Arabic empires. It was still a fight between them, and it's because of that history that we're not really led into.
Yeah, I mean, one might wonder why, if both Muslims and Jews consider Israel to be their holy land, Jerusalem to be a sacred city, and all of this, why they can't just share the space. I mean, logically it makes sense that, okay, you both want to be here, just be there together, but somehow they have to be separated by walls and iron domes and all of this.
What locality in the world today only has one people? Like a major city, major locality, only has one group of people. Like we have to live among each other. We have to learn how to get along. There's some deep ideological barriers that are getting in the way of that are even kind of have their spiritual source that, you know, is keeping those people at odds, keeping, you know, them almost cursed, because we can maybe think one is benefiting at a certain time over the other, but they all are always losing lives to that conflict. And today, you know, the people around the world, and those people specifically, are it's unfortunate that we have to watch more lives being lost, more lives being poured to that conflict, but that's where we are.
And that's where we at the Earth Center are fortunate to have a different perspective and a different source of information. What we're going to share with you now is a clip from our founder, the Earth Center's founder, Master Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig, who you can see depicted in my brother's shirt here. He had a different take on the situation that we're not going to speak for him. We're just going to put the clip on and let you see for yourself what he has to say about the history of why these two groups of people have not been able to get along for such a long time.
And let's be clear, it's not that he had a different take as one person with an opinion, but because he had access to the to historical archives that go much further back than what the modern world tends to tell us. I mean, even our modern world, our modern science for a while was telling us that the world started 6,000 years ago because they had to piggyback on the religious ideologies. The temples that he comes from, the initiatic education that he comes from, never had those kind of claims. They always considered, okay, how long have our ancestors been documenting history, been passing down oral history to give us an understanding of what was here before us. And now, equipped with that deeper history, his perspective is much different than what we find in today's media, what we find in today's conversations. And I think it's very important for people in Chicago, especially people who consider themselves descendants of our motherland, descendants of Africa, descendants of Meritah, because so often when we have a very small view of our history, then we end up fighting the wrong battles and joining the wrong teams. And those teams and those battles that we fight in and those perspectives we take in, they don't even honor our own heritage, our own ancestry. So you're fortunate enough to get the perspective coming from those temples because of the sacrifice and the work of Neb Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig. So take a look and, you know.
Yeah, and please, you know, don't undervalue the, you know, the accuracy, the historical accuracy of what belongs to us and our heritage. But yeah, without further ado, here's Master Naba on the conflict in the Middle East. What's your insights?
Yeah. Well, you have to understand that that war between Jewish and Christians and Muslims, that's, you know, it's part of the curse that our ancestors have set. Because you know that civilizationally speaking, Jewish and Arabs are descendants of black people. Okay, literally at one point of the history, they were rebelling because most of them, how do you call it? We have that notion of you know, a kingship that is what we call, even in the villages, we have what we call legitimate children and illegitimate children. The illegitimate children cannot be king. They just cannot be king. They can enjoy the status of prince. They can enjoy, you know, just like my name, I'm Naba. Naba people, we don't become king. Our family name can be seen as a title for a king, but we don't become king. You see, we have that kind of issue. So at one point they decided they would like to be part of the kingship system. We say traditionally that's not possible. Then they decided to have their own rebellion. When they started, they were all together. When they started, they were all together. They had their own rebellion. They used that famous exodus, bad mouthing their fathers and, all this. And then, well, they say they can make it on their own. But none of them can make it unless we give our blessing to that. We know it. You see, we know it unless we give, whatever is happening to the people of color, the black people, before that is fixed and we reconstitute ourselves and give our blessing to them, this world, take a note about it. Nothing will change. It will be like this.
Yeah, so always great to get a fresh and different perspective coming from our traditions on certain things. Sometimes when we get those explanations, it can seem far-fetched from our Western perspective, but which other explanation is really making sense right now?
And we have to really wonder, especially those of us in America, we know what oppression feels like. We know what it feels like to have the information being presented to you controlled and limited. And we have to wonder if, we rarely ever get the perspective of indigenous Africa. If it's a country that's controlled by Christians, we know that they limit the perspective coming in from Islam. If it's a country being controlled by communists, we know that they limit the perspective coming from capitalists. But all of them have already limited a long time ago the indigenous perspective. The indigenous perspective coming from their own locality, and especially the indigenous perspective that mothered or fathered all of the indigenous perspectives around the world coming from our motherland. So when you have the opportunity to get that perspective, don't pass it up and don't minimize how important adding that perspective to your reflections can be.
Yes. On that note, we're gonna move towards talking about our next guest, or hearing from our next guest, Tonton Olévié
Kouami.
Olévié Kouami. You do better to.
Tonton Olévié Kouami, really Olévié Kouami, was, as Kasabez said in the beginning of the episode, one of the original members of the Khepra Foundation. And the Khepra Foundation was Master Naba's first organization here in Burkina Faso. It was an organization of traditionalists, priests, healers, traditional researchers, and African professionals. And they were coming together, really brought together by Master Naba to make sure that Africa was being proactive and taking responsibility for itself, following the colonial age, following the age of independence, the age of enslavement. Before that, after so many ambitions, led to Africa being reframed and represented by outsiders, by those really looking to what's the word? Rape Africa. Let's just make it as blunt as possible, because it was a long history, and we all know that history of the exploitation of Africa's people, Africa's resources, Africa's heritage. So I don't want to say too much, because in the interview you will see that Olévié explains some, but Khepra Foundation was that Africans now taking responsibility for telling Africa's story and for furthering African culture. furthering the culture of their fathers, investing their energies into that instead of continuing to see every African that's been educated then shipped off to Europe to live their life there and invest their energies there, shipped off to US and invest their energies there, et cetera, et cetera.
Just like what we were just saying, that the traditional or indigenous African perspective ends up getting marginalized. It even can happen here. It even happens here where people more so value what's coming from a European perspective, what's coming from a Judeo-Christian perspective, before looking at their traditional spirituality, before looking at their traditional values, their ways of life, their traditional governmental structure, instead of, going for democracies. People, also have indigenous forms of government here that they can be supporting. So I think it's a major step to really step back and say, okay, all you people who've been trying to tell us what we should be and trying to convince us that we're not good enough for the world, that we don't have anything of value to present, that we have something of value to present. And right now, the way the world is going, we can clearly see that these modern institutions, whether it be political, religious, educational, whatever, they don't have the answers for the problems that they themselves are causing. So we just have to thank again Master Naba for giving us access to a whole bottomless well of knowledge and
yeah, it's interesting because there's become, from that whole situation, there's become this polarization even between the African-born African and the African-born outside of Africa, especially the African-born in the U.S. and coming out of the situation of enslavement. And because of that polarization, having been in the work of Kebtah, the mission of the Earth Center that was brought 25 years ago, we've heard a lot of complaints, problems coming from African Americans, African-born Americans about Master Naba's work. And there's always that kind of question or complaint. Well, if it's so important, why doesn't he do it there in Africa, where they need it? How can we trust it if he just came over here to sell it to us instead of doing it with his own people back home? And that's the thing that people miss, is that one, he did it. He started it back home first. He started Khepra Foundation first, because whatever oppression, whatever exploitation we see in the West, we tend to forget that this was the source. It happened here first. It had to happen here first, even to get us over there. So he was trying to tackle it here. But he noticed what Kasabez is saying is that everybody here just wants to go there. Everybody here is putting their sights on how to be successful, on how to be developed by looking at people over there, by looking at the media over there. So after working here, that's when he said, okay, even to benefit the people here, I know I need to bring this to those people that got disconnected. He knew that already. But he said, even to benefit those people as well as my people here, the people here in the big cities that are being led away from their own heritage, their own identity, it's better I go where they're looking. And then I start really building it there so that they see it when they're at the place that they're looking to leave home for. Because if they end up finding home in the bush that they left home for, then they will get to see just how valuable home was, just how valuable the values and the culture that they had at home was, that they were looking past. And so that's really what he did. He always told a story of a symposium led by the Thomas Sankara administration. For those of you who aren't familiar with Thomas Sankara, please go look him up. He was a revolutionary president, the one that led the revolution that changed the name from Upper Volta to Burkina Faso. And at that symposium, there were a bunch of speakers brought over from the United States, Black Americans. And Master Naba, who was young at that time, I think maybe just before age 20 or right around age 20, he sat and he listened, and all of these speakers, these intellectuals, were talking about how difficult the situation was for blacks in America. The education system, the prison system, drugs, all of that, all of the things coming out of the civil rights movement, and then, all that followed. And he sat and listened to all of them tell, such the miserable conditions of people in the West of color. And afterwards, they asked for questions. There was a time for questions and answers, and a young Master Naba stood up and was like, okay, I listened to everything that you guys said, and I hear it. That's really serious, and we all one family. We all come from the same navel, from the same umbilical cord. So what's the plan? How do we change it? How do we improve the situation for people of color over there? And when he said that, that was the most impactful part of the symposium, because he said nobody had an answer. And everybody just came to talk about how bad the situation was, but that didn't lead any of them to building a plan. And at that time, he said he realized that whatever he was building on this side, whatever his family had preserved, he knew he had to take it to the U.S. One of the first places he had to take it to was the U.S. because he knew that the heritage, the ancestral identity of those people is what could help them. But nobody in the West was making that plan to go and get that, or making that plan to really remedy the situation at a fundamental level.
And now, with us coming back and even bringing our families here, raising our children here, putting our children in the schools here and all of this, at least hopefully some of those young people who are here, like kind of desperately seeking a way to get to the United States or Europe and things like that, have some time to reflect and say, okay, I'm trying to get over there, but these people are trying to get over here. And the more we can do that, then that will cause people to, question themselves, question their motivation, question their ambitions to run from what belongs to them to try to get what belongs to somebody else.
Right. But we will get into that more and more as we go through this series. For this first episode, though, I don't want to take us too far away from the guest that we brought on, that we interviewed, which it was a very important interview. It was one of those original members coming back into the fold and giving their perspective, not only on what Master Naba was starting at that time and how they were involved, but also on how they see the progress, the evolution of the Earth Center to today, how they see the mission evolve today. But we not only are dedicating this first episode to Khepra, the mission's beginnings here in Burkina Faso, but this episode is also going to be dedicated to Olévié Kouami himself, because just less than a month after the interview that you will watch, Tonton Olévié returned home to the land of the dead. He passed away on, I'll have to get the exact date, but he passed away in October, late October. So this is a very special interview because it's probably the last interview that I know of that he did, the last talk that he really gave for the public to see before he journeyed home to be with the ancestors. We will let him say what he has to say and give really that piece of history, that piece of Kebtah history from his perspective, and then we will come back after the interview. So Ujai everyone, we are very excited to be here. Another episode of the Sunnyside podcast. It's the Chicago Sunnyside podcast, but this one is going to be the International Sunnyside podcast because we just started year 423 on the Kemetic calendar, and this year marks the 25th year anniversary that the Earth Center has been active in its revolutionary work in the West. The first temple that was established in Chicago by Master Naba Lamoussa Morodenibig was established in the colonial year of 1998, and so this year marks 25 years of his great work in the West. And I'm very pleased today because we have as our esteemed guest one of the members of the original organization that the Maakmaah or Master Naba started still on the continent of Africa before he brought the mission outside of the continent. And that is elder sitting next to him. I will call him Tonton out of respect throughout the interview, but Tonton, can you introduce yourself to the viewers?
Okay. Ujai and Happy New Year to everybody. I'm very happy to be with you and to participate in this podcast. Very honored to be there, to be still alive and seeing. The Maakmaah is a member of my family by our mother's side. We have the same grandmother called Adama Mola. His mother is my auntie, the oldest, and my mother is the one who came after the twins in this family, Gado. That's why they call her Gado. She passed away just 14 months ago now, actually. So with the Maakmaah, we grow together with the same house with our grandmother, because every holidays, school holidays, I used to come to spend my time in Sokode, where we retrieve together every year. If not, it is him who came in Lome sometime and retrieve there. So our relation was very, very close because we were the boys with the same age, growing together, experimenting things together. But after, when we was at the college level, we were separated from about 10 or 11 years. We didn't meet again. And when we met again, it was exactly in 1988. He was coming from Germany at that time. Me too, I finished my university study in French, and I came back in Togo, wanted to work from Togo, and he too came back from his experiences from Europe, Germany, etc. And when I met my cousin, found him with the locks. I have also experimented the dreadlocks, but with the Rastafari. Yes, at that time when I was at the university, it's at the time of Bob Marley and the Rastafarism. So I was also interested by this movement.
University of Lome?
Yeah, I know, in France. When I was in France. And so when I came back, I put for me, it is a Rasta man. And when I called me Rasta man, I said, hey, my cousin, no, my dress are not Rasta dread. Started by that. So
that's what we used to say, pilgrimage, because everybody call him Rasta,
exactly.
But he starts to say, every dread's not a Rasta.
Exactly. It started from me. So, no, I'm not a Rasta. So he starts talking about the Kemet, his research about Egyptian mythology, and from Apaitu I was aware about the Chenkata Diop works on the civilization, African civilization, something like that. And this was the thing which I approached Ash very closely. And I was one with in the family, his closer family. We understand his vision very quickly and accompany him. And so he's the one who brought me the first time in Burkina Faso too. I discovered Burkina Faso because of him. When I was studying in France, it is at that time Thomas Sankara was reigning in Burkina Faso. So I did not live in the country at that time, but I hear from distance. And when he came now, when we met, he gave me more explanation about this.
And so at that time, when he brought you to Burkina, that was the late 80s, and that was right around the time Sankara was assassinated, right?
Yes.
Did you get there before the assassination or after?
No, exactly, Bob. Sankara was assassinated in 1987, and it is 1988 that I arrived there. So there was the movement was still there. Just the president has changed. He's talking about rectifications, but well, the movement was there. And I recall that It is after a visit of Sankara in America in 1984 in New York.
Yes.
He visited the Harlem City, and he was shocked by the life of the black people there. And when he came back, he was interviewed at the airport, and he had talked about the creation of a kind of academia for black people, and they call it Institut des Peuples Noirs, Institute of Black People. That's how the idea was launched at that time, and I have adhered to it, and the Maakmaah has adhered to the same movement.
Yes, I remember him talking
Yes.
about that. But we also growing up in America, those speeches he gave in Harlem are some speeches that are published and we can read growing up in America.
Exactly. At that time, I remember that Maakmaah has met the Dubois family members, somebody, and the Dubois family members. They came here, we met together, and finally, this Institute of Black People was created after the death of Sankara. It's exactly in 1990. 1990, they created finally this institute.
The government or?
The government of Burkina Faso. But it was with a Pan-Africanist vision, but they have launched it, and finally they retrieved themselves alone and I recall that this is at that place in 1991 or 92, the Maakmaah has invited all the intellectuals for Burkina Faso. I was there, and fortunately, I was the trainer who was invited to train the staff of this institute in computer, in using the computer. It is the word processing. At that time, it was word perfect. We are talking about word perfect. So I have to say.
Yes, back in the 90s.
Yes, so we have launched the creation of this association called Khepra. The becoming Khepra. I have retrieved exactly the preamble of the F Center is exactly the vision of the Khepra.
Yes.
It was a vision. We wanted to have a community of intellectual, artists, leadership, African leaders, black people who can write the story of Africa by Africans.
Yes.
That was the goals after create ourselves. So when the Maakmaah has started, it was the first level of the hieroglyph. We are talking about the per ink. After when I discovered that we arrive at the Meniooh, what's happened? So I'm following up you since this time. Yes.
Because after that time, how long were you guys together before you returned to France and he returned to his travels?
Exactly. Since 1998, when I came back from Europe, I stay here. I just travel sometime and go back. And I recall when he go to America, I was in Burkina Faso at that time. And when he came back from the America, at that time I came back to Togo too. So finally,
I see.
Yes, this is how.
Yeah, so if I remember the stories correctly, he originally came around 1995 to America, but then went back.
Exactly.
And then came back and then finally made it to Chicago around 1998 to start the center there, the activities there.
Yes.
And I really want to, because today we're celebrating the new year. A few days ago we celebrated with the ceremonies for the new year here in the Head Aishat Healing Center of the Earth Center. And I want to get into how you see the progress and what you think after now reconnecting with the movement in the flesh. You've been, connected with us on social media, and I know you've been meeting, at the Ouagadougou temple every year or so.
Exactly.
But now that you've come here and seen this, I want to really get into what you think about, how the movement has progressed since Maakmaah has passed away, how it's continued on.
It's very fantastic. I have congratulated you. You need my congratulation every day for the eternity, because It's very, very fantastic. You are doing a very, very good job because for me, you understand, you have seized the vision, the real vision the market wanted, and you have fulfilled it till now. This is what he is thinking about exactly. Have a kind of arboretum where they can find every species of medicinal around him, where he can make grow himself his chicken to eat. That was the vision at the beginning, at the starting. So when he passed away early, before realizing this, and after we see this, it's more beautiful than what we are thinking. When you observe actually the situation, the world, you will see that the wheel is turning. The African is at the Renaissance cycle. And to consolidate, to fortify such of movement, we need to have a faith in something which coming from our homelands. And the F Center is the start point, actually. And I'm seeing in my vision that until year 2050, I will pass away certainly, but this place, this place, they will be replicated. Yes, it will be replicated everywhere, somewhere. This is what will happen. You are doing very, very fantastic job, and the schools, I want the branches of Katibi, Medumayit, and Sunt, very well organized. Very well organized. And I'm interested now, I'm ready now to start the initiation too, and to have my own name, to know my name now.
Tonton,
Yes.
that means so much to us, you know, in the leadership, because you can imagine it was a struggle after the Maakmaah passed. None of us were expecting that. All of us even looking at each other as youth, as children, as babies. How are we going to keep this going? Because it can't die.
Yes.
It was too important for the world.
I imagine.
And so to hear you say that, because as babies, as youth, our eyes weren't there when he was initiated, when he was, starting activities in Ouagadougou.
He was alone.
Yes.
He was very alone. He has a problem. People like Alpha Blondy.
Yes.
He approached him, but he did not understand himself. Alpha Blondy is talking about Jerusalem. We are talking about Africa.
Right.
This was that was a difference because in what he's doing. But now I have noticed that in Guadeloupe or Martinique, the late Omotunde, do you hear about Omotunde? They have a cultural center in Guadeloupe, I think. Okay. What they call the Anja. Their goals is to study deeply the Egyptology also, yes.
Yes, and I think there's, of course, ones in Senegal after the work of the great Cheikh Anta Diop.
Yes.
But I can't imagine the loneliness for Maakmaah in being so revolutionary, so ahead of his time, carrying this mission alone.
Yes, right.
Even traveling the world
alone, it's true.
Seeking support.
It's true.
People don't have the vision to see how far ahead it is. So, we're really glad that, you bringing your support back as one of those original members that were there.
Thank you.
Putting the contribution
Yes.
in. But I want also to bring the conversation back to this place, this place that raised both of you. Because right now in the Head Aisha Healing Center, we're sitting in the region of Chaojo, just outside the city of Sokode. And you were mentioning that you guys share the same grandmother, but even to just mention that grandma and just mention her name, it doesn't really speak to her status in the city here. And who really was she in the city? What was the environment you guys were growing up in?
Oh, my grandmother was, our grandmother, Adama Mola, was, came from the royalty, the royalty of Sokode, Koma. They are from the clan they call Mola. The Mola has the noble, the notability of Sokode. They are the owner of the F of Sokode are the Mola first. The others, Traore, they came from Toure, they were strangers, came from another one. And I recall when I was a young boy, our grandmother was the chief of the women. She was like a queen mother. In Koma there, they have a place where she judged women affairs. So yes, that's why. And also as a priest, because every Friday I saw my grandmother making ceremonies offering for her twins. Because her twins first, and everybody, when he was very young, we used to go to the villages around for periodic ceremonial when I came in vacancy, in holidays. And what is fantastic also with my two cousins, Lamoussa Naba, they are those who vaccinated me more, because they are living mostly in the village, and me, I came from the towns time to time to the village. When I came, they called me in the room, say, Oliver, you see, this powder,
Yes,
okay, is again the snake. When the snake, you have never, this one, so, and yes, I call it vaccination.
And I really bring that up because now, even for the Healing Center here, that is a partnership between the Earth Center and the sister organization of the Earth Center, Ancestral Natural Healing, also founded by the great Maakmaah. It also, a lot of the staff is coming from descendants of that great priestess, Nana Adama Mola.
Sure.
And her story was also very inspirational to me because as Americans, growing up trying to reclaim our culture, you know, we grew up with some access to some of those things like the speeches of Thomas Sankara, like the work of Sheikh Anta Diop that make it into the world of academia. But other than that, it's mostly the slave trade. And that's the big, you know, looming challenge for all of us in our identity and all of that.
Sure.
But he told us that, and correct me if I got the story wrong, but that his grandma Nana Adama Mola even had a brand from when she was captured for enslavement, but she happened to, you know, be able, with her intelligence and her spiritual awareness and power, escape and make it back home.
Yes, this is the story about the royalty of Koma in general. They are part of this category of persons or clan who have participated during the story. I have heard about this slavery.
I just make the point because for us in the West, that was really inspiring because it showed how close we were. It showed that, you know, that close, maybe you, Master Naba, could have been born.
Yeah, why not?
We all the same people.
Sure.
So this is clearly, you know, the heritage that we were removed from. And so the Earth Center coming is really like, you know, a big movement of salvation.
Yes.
Because it's now reconnecting us directly with those cultures that are in the inlands where a lot of us were captured from. A lot of our ancestors were captured from. Yeah, one of the interesting thing about that, just for those in the West, either in the Caribbean or the United States, is that Naba was Master Naba. You call him Naba.
Yeah, Master, yes.
I've never referred to him like that. But the Maakmaah was explaining to us that even in Togo, because it's on the slave coast, you find so many languages here because so many people were captured from many different places.
It's true.
So it's really a big part of history for people of color in the West, but it's not given the proper promotion because they don't play as big a role in the tourism like Ghana plays in the tourism.
Yes.
So everybody thinks there, but really this was a major route for the people leaving Africa. But you know, people rarely know about that. So interesting.
Yeah.
So as one of those original members during the years of Khepra, can you say any more about what the vision was, what some conversation were, maybe what some stories that you remember from back then that really talked about what you guys were envisioning? I know you said even what has become even seems to kind of outshine what you were envisioning. But is there anything else you can say about that? If not, no problem.
Yes.
Because you already said this outshines.
Yes. No, it's
How
no, really, you know, it's this vision is really a personal vision of the Maakmaah. And as you know, when you have started an organization, and when it is not a for-profit organization, finally you find yourself alone to go alone because no one, your partners don't have their interests. So this is the story of the Khepra. The Khepra was a good idea for everybody, but at the moment, yes, this is a problem. The one composed who was the founders who were invited for the launching. We are not really in the same level of comprehension of the world. Yeah, they serve the same vision. There are those who are just there to repeat what they have learned from from Western as an intellectual, and those who want to adapt or readapt or retrieve something locally. So it makes us everybody has taken his parts.
Yeah. And at that time, the convention that was kind of connected to the Institute of People in Oahu.
Yeah, the black people.
Around how many people were there for that?
Ooh, I recall we are among about 50 persons, but yes, great personalities of Burkina Faso. There was Joseph Kizerbo, there was Jean-Pierre Ilboudo, Jean-Pierre Compaoré, I recall the names, Laurent Bado, a famous philosopher, yes, they were all invited. That's why we approached the Institute of the Black People also, because at that time they have the database. They had the database of the African intellectual in every country, and we have launched invitation to all these people. At that time there was not Zoom. If not, yes, it will be a big. It was a big event because we tried to reach out to everybody. It was helped. And presently at the first meeting for the launching, it was about 30 or 50 intellectual, mostly from Burkina Faso. At that time I was living there too, I was working there.
Which in Burkina Faso it was really charged because of Sankare's movement.
Exactly, at that time.
And do you have contact with any of them?
No, just another parent of me by my grandfather's side, who works here as an international organization, a member of UNICEF in Burkina Faso. And after he retired, he stayed in the country. He was a counselor at the time of Sankara. He was a choir counselor, and I was very close to him too, because of the using of computer. They were the first who has computer at that time, and they solicit me to be the trainer. So I was very close, and I saw many persons came to him. He was not from, he's not native from Burkina Faso. He's from Benin, but as international, he was international director for UNICEF for Sahel region for more than 30 years. And after he retired, he stayed here. And he one of the intellectuals. He has worked. He wrote a book called Négritude et Négrologue. He is in the movement with the Senghor, Aimé Césaire. Yes, his name is Adotevi, Professor Adotevi. It's from him I met Blaise Compaoré in his house. I met some personality. So.
Okay, and lastly, Tonton,
yes.
I know you mentioned it previously, but just to be clear for all of our viewers who may not know, because you were saying you can see the wheels turning in the world today.
Exactly.
And today we see a lot happening in Burkina Faso with President Traoré and also
Niger,
in
Mali, Guinea.
Guinea. You have anything to say further on that as far as the revolutionary spirit really coming to reawaken and represent African values and identity to the world?
Exactly, yes. This is what I want to say. I have here, there's president, there's military who came back with coup d'etat, but with coup d'etat without any death, any dead person, and we try to reinvent the cooperation between the Western and East part. Each time they have started their speech, say, we want to thank God first. We want to thank God first for been capable to this coup de force without any death, etc. Okay, it's good. But what I want to hear in few here is we want to thank our ancestors first. It will come because we need it. This is the moment for the health center to in their our prayers to ask for more action from our ancestors. I think there are many people, many dead who need to be set up as at the level of real ancestors. Again, to have more soldiers at that part to fight with us.
Yes, never do it.
Yes.
Because that's really, maybe some of our viewers have heard some initiates from Kebtah talk about how Meniooh was a real revolutionary. How Meniooh's revolution is really the starting point for real revolution.
Exactly.
Because a lot of times we can see the political revolutions happen, but when they start, like Tonton just said, and you see the revolution doesn't go that deep.
No.
They didn't yet do the work that needs to actually proceed with the real revolution.
Exactly.
And that's really what the Meniooh brought through Kebtah, through Ancestral. So I really want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Today with us, celebrating, kicking off 423 with one of the pioneers of this mission, and we're happy to have you back in this mission, Tonton.
Thank you.
We're so happy
Thank
to
you.
see
I'm very honored to be back.
May the ancestors continue to
Thank you.
support us.
Thank you.
Clear the path for us.
Amin. Neterdua. Dua neterdua. Applause to you again.
So we are really grateful. We were really fortunate to be able to speak with Tonton. We're really grateful to his spirit and are just wishing for the transition of his spirit to his ancestral vestibule. It was really meaningful to those of us, especially those of us who have been working in the mission of Kebtah in the West for a long time, to see one of the original members returning into the fold. It wasn't that he just returned, because he's been visiting the Ouagadougou temple pretty routinely, every year, every couple years. But this year, he was able to visit our Houston temple in the United States, and he came and visited Head Eye Shop, where you saw the interview was done from our healing center in Central Togo. But it was really meaningful because he was so proud, as you see in the interview. He was so proud of the work that had continued, and really astonished because it was realizing that vision that the Meniooh had, and nobody really understood how big the vision was, how profound the vision what could be. So it was very meaningful. We were all very grateful to see him back, especially at a time when, you know, the world is really changing. African descendants across the globe are really standing up and realizing that they have to take responsibility for how Africa is moving into the future. We've seen that with the recent coup d'etats, that the West wants to complain about, but coup d'etats that aren't taking life. When do you even see that? Like governmental shifts that don't take life. I think January 6th happenings at the White House took life.
Yeah, more people died there than...
and that wasn't even what you can, you know...
That wasn't even a coup.
So, I mean, even in Chicago, the streets of Chicago, we take more life every weekend. Yeah, every weekend. So, it's really something to watch, this kind of awakening in the spirit of Africa. I also recently heard that there's a journalist, I think he might be...
You said Alain or something?
Alain Foka. He's a French speaker. I think he might be from Cameroon, but I might be wrong about that. But he started an organization called Mansa Media Group, where he's trying to do the same, really bring together African intellectuals, African professionals to tell Africa's story themselves, instead of continuing to allow their colonizers of the past to be the one to present them to the world.
That's big.
It's big, and it's, you know, shout out to Alain Foka. He has a YouTube channel, so you can go and check it out. They're just getting started. It is in French, but they have English subtitles. So you can check it out and just get behind this push wherever you see it.
What's that, Mansa? How do you spell that?
Mansa Media Group. Mansa is spelled Manssaah.
Okay.
But Mansa Media Group.
Nice. But yeah, it's such a powerful note that Tonton Olévié ended on in the interview, you know, because he's talking about, I mean, it sounds just small. Like he's saying, you know, everyone says thank God, you know, to God be the glory. You know, we couldn't have done this without God, first of all. You know, you hear this all the time, and it's like we need to change that back to thank the ancestors.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like a small difference, and you hear now people talking about that now more in the United States. A lot more people are talking about the ancestors and things of that nature, which is great to see. You know, but I don't think people really understand how profound it is, because when we talk about thanking the ancestors, there's really a way to do that. It's not just like you say thanks ancestors, you know, but the way to thank the ancestors is to give them what they need and to help elevate them. The same way Tonton Olévié in Het Aisha, he did works to elevate his own ancestors, and now that he's transitioned, you know, we doing what we can to elevate him.
So, I mean, yes, there's what a person might hear outside of traditional culture when we say thanking ancestors, but then like Kasabez is saying, is that there's a whole technical system of how that's done. Thanking ancestors doesn't just mean shouting out Malcolm X's name or some other
Marcus Garvey
person in the struggle that
Poor Libation
contributed.
Harriet Tubman.
But thanking ancestors is really a system. But what Tonton is saying is, when we get back to seeing our leaders, military leaders, governmental leaders, even leaders of, you know, movements, returning to that system, that's really when a real revolution is happening. And that's really what we were saying that Master Naba started with Kebtah, and that's really, you know, an important aspect of us returning to our identity. Returning to our identity doesn't just mean putting on a shirt where it looks like it, saying some words where it looks like we're back in our identity, we're back doing our own stuff, but it comes with an understanding of how we fit in that system and the work to maintain ourselves in that system. And that's really, you know, in retrospect, whenever we see a human being lose his life, in retrospect, you always can see kind of what the moves that the spirit was making on the way out. And Tonton Olévié had came to the healing center and was doing just that, doing works for his ancestors. And we didn't understand at that time, but it was even like in preparation because he was going to join them. So this was really a special interview for us. This was really a special episode, but let it really inspire you. Let it really awaken something inside of you to really look into returning to that system of ancestral veneration, that system of living your life for your ancestors, for your descendants, instead of allowing, today's media, today's ideologies to hijack your life and take it away from where you got it from. It came from your ancestors. Mm-hmm. It didn't come from Facebook. It didn't come from Instagram. It came from your ancestors. So you have to consider day to day, what am I doing to make sure I pay it back? What am I doing to make sure I uphold it and I dignify those that I got it from?
We were talking about Israel and Palestine in the bigger context of the Judeo-Christian religions and all the, conflicts that happen between them. In this case, we're talking about Judaism and Islam. But, you even have Christian versus Muslim crusades throughout history. You've had, conflicts between different factions of the actual church itself. Of the Christian church, you have the Catholics versus Protestants and all that, and so many people killed. And what gets lost in the middle of that is that when you have two big, there's that proverb, the African proverb, when two elephants are fighting, it's the grass that suffers. It's like everyone feels like, okay, I need to get on one of these two elephants because I don't want to be the grass. And what ends up being trampled out every time is like the original indigenous systems, the indigenous ways of life, indigenous languages, indigenous spiritual practices. And now that we've lost those, we really, without any context to understand, we don't have any idea how much it's affecting us right now in our lives in every aspect. When we talk about revolution, we so often think about taking power, one group taking power over another. We're the ones who are oppressed. We're taking power back from the oppressors. And we've seen that happen over and over and over again throughout history. Every time it ends up like pretty much the ones who take power are just perpetrating the same system that they were just trying to run from. We want to be the ones with the foot on the other people's neck, and we don't want the foot on our neck anymore. And it doesn't really improve the condition of humanity. We see things continuing to degenerate. So the revolution that Master Naba started, the revolution of Kebtah, is a revolution of ideas. It's not a fight of flesh and blood that we're fighting. It's a revolution of ideas where we are taking back control first over our own lives and our own kind of way of seeing ourselves, really identifying those aspects of ourselves that make up who we are that in the modern context we don't get to understand. And then learning how to feed that, learning how to empower that, because we don't know how much not being connected with our ancestors hurts us. We don't know how much them kind of being lost, wandering, trying to find their way in the darkness without anyone to help them is hurting us. And it's a hard thing to even say to people who just believe you die and then suddenly you're at the gates, you know what I mean? That there's a journey just to get to whichever gate you're trying to get to even find out, what's going to be the next step, and it's a technical process that's been researched and discovered and understood since a very, very long time. And now that we don't know about it, there's a whole aspect of our lives that we're missing, because we don't just live and then suddenly it's over. We live, and then when we die, there's a whole other journey for the spirit to take on. And if we don't know what that next stage in our existence is, how much value can we attach to what we accomplish in this life when we die, and all the money we gain, we lose it? all the friends we had, we leave them behind. All the family members, we leave them behind. All the fame we have, what does it do for us at that point?
We grew up thinking that what you don't know won't hurt you. But understand that what you don't know, you suffer from. And you will suffer from your entire life, and you'll even pass that suffering to your children. There's a whole understanding of our spiritual health, our spiritual alignment, our spiritual protection, that is no longer in our thoughts, no longer in our conversations, no longer a responsibility of our families. But that is what life was about for our ancestors. Mm-hmm. So that's really, this episode really being our part one of celebrating 25 years of Kebtah's mission in the West. That's really what Kebtah was bringing. This episode being part one of celebrating 25 years of Kebtah's mission in the West. That's really what Kebtah is bringing, and giving an opportunity for every spirit that wants it, that wants to be proactive and take that opportunity for themselves, for their families, for their descendants, to find their way back into that spiritual system. In the city that the interview with Tonton was, just outside of Sokode. In Sokode, at the time when tradition ruled there, you didn't hear about people dying early. It just didn't happen because everybody in the society had their place to fit at making sure the city was spiritually protected. So even when accidents were coming to people, you spiritually moved them out of the way. Even to have a family member, one of your ancestors, one of your parents, your grandparents, die with bloodshed, that will go on and have repercussions on all of the descendants until you spiritually fix that situation. Because that's a terrible thing to happen, to be shot in the city and then lose your blood and have your blood pour on the earth in order to die. So all of those things, like think about how often that happens in Chicago. Now think about how many spiritual handicaps we given ourselves and we don't even know how to fix. We don't know how to heal. So this is really what Kebtah's mission was, coming to reconnect us to the culture that had that knowledge, that allowed every family to take responsibility for itself to do that. But that reclamation, that reconnection is a journey. It's been 400, 500 years since we were connected. We can't expect to go and then Kebtah give us all of that knowledge back in a weekend, and now we think we can do it and we can do it for everybody else. That's more, ridiculous.
To even for us trying to do this in one lifetime, we don't know that that's going to be enough to fill all the holes left from, what our ancestors were disconnected from.
Exactly. So it's a journey, but this opportunity is there. Those of you, the viewers, really looking to improve not only your city, but the situation of your family, yourself first, reach out to Kebtah, look into it. We have a recent publication that we brought out called the Book of Purifications that even gives you the first steps at starting to elevate your ancestors again, build a connection with them. So we really want to dedicate this episode to that idea, that opportunity before all of you, and to the spirit of Tonton, who realized the profundity of that mission and was bringing his energies back to lend and push behind bringing this message, this mission across the globe.
Yeah, please, before we close, I just want to reiterate, the modern system has very deliberately introduced ideologies, religions, scientific ideologies, political ideologies to disconnect us from our original ways of thinking, our original ways of being. Before this, our lives were dedicated towards what we can do to kind of secure our well-being into the future by acknowledging those who came before us, and basically preparing ourselves for the next stage of our existence, which is life after death. And that's a very technical process that takes a lot of effort, it takes time, it takes commitment to, And those who wanted to see themselves in control of humanity they needed to find a way to get us only focused on what they want us to be doing, which is working for them. At the time the slave trade started, you couldn't pay somebody to get up and go work in the United States. They had to be captured and put in chains and like put at the bottom of ships and shipped over and then kept in chains for the rest of their life. You know, now you have people jumping on rafts, crowding onto rafts, 50 and 60 people on a raft to try to sail across the Mediterranean, and they're dying in the sea, they're dying in the ocean the same way our ancestors did, and nobody has to, matter of fact, they're even paying people to do that so that they can have the privilege to go work for some white slave master. The same thing our ancestors used to run from and try to escape from, as Tonton Olévié was telling the story of his grandmother. Now, what has changed in the ideology? The media the modern education and all of this have planted this idea that your life is nothing if you don't have a smartphone, if you don't have, whatever material stuff that doesn't last. And our whole lives have been about that. And we in the West know that as far as, material wealth, they say we're the richest country in the world. And with all that so-called opportunity and blah, 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 milk and honey and whatever you want to call it, we still dying from like drug overdoses because we're so disconnected from reality. We're so disconnected from ourselves that we just don't even want to live. And so how long are we going to keep, feeding this same kind of way of being without going back to, maybe what worked for people before? Because even in the villages where you can go outside the city here in Burkina Faso and go to a village and see people who might be, they might not be eating 5-star meals. They might not have running water. They might not even have electricity, but they probably happier than the average living in Trump Tower or Lake Point Tower or any of these places.
Happier and connected to nature, connected to their ancestry. Just as Kasabez put it, it's about going back and utilizing the wisdom, the resources, the systems that came before us to secure our future, to secure our identity moving into the future. If that's our descendants, that's our descendants, but it's also our own spirit, even as it moves, even after death. That's really what Khepra meant. This episode being the first episode dedicated to the Khepra Foundation. The name Khepra that Meniooh chose for that foundation would translate to the becoming, but it could also be translated to the future, because it's about that bigger picture of where are we going? What are we doing today in order to, secure where we're going? And that's really something that we have to think about and give back to our ancestors. The perspective of time and space that our ancestors had, and beyond time and space that our ancestors had, and where we fit into that, and how we take care of ourselves in that understanding. So we want to thank you for joining us for this episode. We will be coming back to this series after a few episodes, after a few more episodes. And as always, we just bringing light to the obscurity in the city, the obscurity in the minds of Chicagolanders and people across the globe, so that we all can find, a brighter future. Khepra.
It's great to have you back, bro. And before we close the episode, I just want to remind everybody, if you have a question, you have a topic we want to cover, visit our website, chicagosunnyside.net, and look in the, you can see the link in the description below. Like this channel, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification thingy so that you can get emails anytime we have new content coming out. We look forward to talking with you again soon. We just getting started with this podcast, and we looking forward to grow. Make sure to share this with your friends and family, anyone you think will find it interesting or informative.
Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street.